Okay, welcome back to this. I haven't done a video for a while. That's because nobody seems to be interested. But what I will do is today a video covering how the exporting to different formats works. And also just a general talk about what has been happening. I'm pretty close to releasing an actual version people can try. So we'll have a go. There's some things that have to be removed, like this stuff doesn't really work, I don't think, anymore. I might make it work again. It's probably a better solution. But anyway, we are going to do exporting to Scratch and exporting to HTML. Actually, we don't do exporting to Scratch. That's not so exciting. But we will open a file. These are some downloaded... see what DVD I was watching. These were like Griff Patch's, some of his stuff that I downloaded off the internet. I might just do Gauntlet because I know that this, I think, works. I'm going to have to, while we're waiting, I forgot to start a web browser. Anyway, so this loads it in. If I compile it, we can go compile and run and Control F9. So this is just more. We're going to do some explaining some of how things work. So to compile and run. This is Control F9. This is these key options. One thing I haven't included yet is the option to change the key mappings. That will happen. But I just use Control F9 because I think I started on JBuilder or something. It was an old IDE and it used Control F9. So if I go Control F9, it loads up and runs. It compiles everything. And this is Griff Patch's. It's already running. And so you can see that this actually works fine in here, and you can zoom in and have a good look around pointlessly. So this all works fine in here. Not everything of his works. Like a lot of things that you import from Scratch are not going to work. Because this doesn't use the built-in collision detection. The collision detection already works fine because that's programmatic. So that's the game. So we'll just stop it for a second. So there is a pause and there's a stop. Another feature that I haven't talked about is there are some debugging tools. One of them is that you can set breakpoints and then you can resume with the pause button. There's a pause command and a break command. Pause, well, I'll go through that in a separate video. But anyway, let's go to the exporters. So if you want to export something, at the moment the exporting panel is part of the game running panel, so there will be a separate, just the exporting. So at the moment it's a bit weird because you have this console and you have this, and then you have a separate tab, the exporting panel, which if you're just exporting, it'd probably be easier to have it over here. In fact, it might be even better just to make the exporting panel go over where the game panel is, because you don't need to see. But yeah, so there's quite a few little tweaks that have to be added. So we're going to go in here and we can add either a Scratch 2 exporter or an HTML. I will actually go through, I think I am leaning towards a Scratch 3 exporter. As I mentioned in a video that no one else would have watched, the reason that it doesn't do Scratch 3 is because it's against the terms and conditions of the Scratch website to upload files that are not created with Scratch, the website. And so you're technically breaking the terms and conditions. You can, of course, upload Scratch 2 things, so you can still do that. But yeah, I thought I'd leave that for a while since that's not an official. But the problem is that you have Penguin Mod and you have other, and Turbo Warp, other tools that maybe they don't have the same restrictions, and so Scratch 3 might be quite useful. And in that case, of course, you can take advantage of the what's the word, add-ons that those things have. So when you do that, you have an HTML0. You can possibly rename that. I'm not too sure. I feel like you should be able to rename it, but you don't seem to be able to. We'll have to add that on. So it's called HTML0. This is your exporter. it has some options which probably will change once I redo some of the aspects of the Scratch exporter. I probably should explain some of these now, but first off, I'm going to just move this off the screen for a second, and then I'm going to choose, and then I'm going to bring that back on and that back on. I'm only doing that because I was I don't want to expose too much of my computer, so I'm trying to avoid like that. You can set the file paths for everything fine except for the exporting, which doesn't seem to work properly. But anyway, we're going to create a new folder. So the HTML thing requires a export folder, not an export file name. So we're going to call this Gaunty. I can't spell gauntlet. Gauntletly. Gauntlet. I can't think of a funny name. Gauntlet. Happy Gauntlet. That's a good name. Happy Gauntlet. Right, and then we're going to create that. And that's created a folder. So this is how it works under Linux, but of course under Windows it might be slightly different. How you create a new folder is different. So now you've done that. So that's got the target folder where you're going to store everything. The strong rerun count is a bit hard to explain without going into details about how the concurrency works, or how the multitasking works. But what happens is if you have a strong thread, which is in this case here when you have the run without refresh call, what it does, so a quick thing is when you normally do it, when you go through a block, I'll come back to that actually, we'll come back to that, that needs a lot of explanation. And the frame workload, I don't know actually what it says, frame workload percent. Basically, you're dividing this up. This is running at 30 frames per second. And so if you say 51%, that means it's going to divide up into whatever 1 second divided by 30, 1/30th of a second. So if you say 51%, it means that it's going to run this code for half of that 1/30th of a frame, and then it's just going to pause and wait for the next frame, no matter how much work you're doing. So if you're running a computationally intensive stuff, this just means it's only actually working half the time, and that doesn't like that doesn't slow down the web browser or your computer or anything, because you've still got 50% of the time you're not doing anything. If you really want to push this up, you should go up to 99 or something like that. Don't go over 100. If you went over 100, it might actually extend. I can't remember how it works, but it may extend the frame. Like, it will become more laggy. But in general, these are the options you should just use. These are fine. The strong rerun count is just to do with, before I go back into it later on, how many times you do something over and over again in a type. I'll have to explain it separately. Anyway, we've made this, and now we just have to we either click on the thing we want to export, and we click this button here, which actually says Run Exporter. Again, this is a very small screen size, so if you're using this on a larger monitor, you'll be able to read everything, and I will change the user interface. But that will run this exporter. So if I just run it, it goes doon. And the problem is you can't actually see that, but it will say here, it will say all the information. So it's building all the different files, and they're outputting it. And that is that. What I will do now is bring in my little friend, the folder that I just exported everything to. So you can see that those are the Scratch files. So those are downloaded directly off the website. That's why they're SB3 files. So it does read Scratch 3 files, it just doesn't write them. So we go in here and you can see that it's created a bunch of files. So these are the kind of roughly packed images. So you can see it's packed all of the images. It's not the best sprite packer, so we're not going to get any awards for this. I will improve it over time. I've got the feeling that sprite packing is an NP hard problem. But most of the time, if your sprites are roughly the same size, or they're different, you can see here it's kind of failed a bit. There's a lot of empty space. You could have filled that up with something else. So I wrote this ages ago, the packing, and you can see some interesting things here. So one thing I will say, these might have been stored as SVG files in the original Scratch project. The black squares here. So when you do this, the HTML export, it turns all vector art into raster art or bitmap art. It doesn't have the option at the moment to set the resolution that you want to do that at. Later on, it will enable you to do that, so you can export the vector art at a higher resolution. Or it may, in fact, almost certainly include the option to continue to store them to keep them as SVGs and to draw them as vector art later on. And then you get these three files. One of them is a project file. One of them is a support file. So these two things are the actual things that run the code. And this is the basic web page that it creates for you, which is not very exciting. It's meant to, at some point, we'll just drop it in here. Oh, it's meant to, here we go. So a project by. So this is all that it creates at the moment, and you can see, we click flag. Click flag once. Or it didn't work. Hold on. Why didn't it work? It certainly worked before. Maybe I have to press space. Oh, you have to press space, not the button. All right. So you can see that it works exactly the same. So in this case, it works exactly the same. There may be some differences between the internal runner and the. Oh, what are these things? Were these in the last bit? Were these in the on the? Hold on a second. We'll just stop this for a second, and we'll restart this one. Were those the weird things that you get stuck on? They're in the main one, aren't they? So. Oh yeah, there's one. Okay, so and they slow you down. Okay, fine. So for this one, it's roughly the same. So of course, projects that you've written in Glitter itself, not Scratch imported projects, are going to. Oh my gosh, where did we go? What is happening with this? Maybe this wasn't a good project to illustrate. Why has it gone so slow? Where's my... Alright. Okay. I'm not too sure. We'll have to investigate that. But so, yeah, so, oh my gosh. Projects that are made in Glitter by default, I mean, originally, I'm going to say much more likely to run correctly and to export to... That's my priority. In order to get the Scratch stuff to import, because there's a lot of weird stuff in Scratch that you can abuse it and do weird programming things. I can't guarantee that it's always that I'm going to get to the point where you can import any Scratch project and export it as a fully functional HTML. I can't guarantee that you can import any Scratch project and have it run properly inside Glitter. Because there's just a lot of different things, and there's some slight differences in how certain things happen. But anyway, that's how that works. So you can also go full screen. It doesn't normally have the sidebars. That's interesting. That doesn't normally pop up. It doesn't do any scaling. So there's a few extra features that need to be added. One of those is that there's a sort of built-in resolution of what is 480 by 360 or 320, 360 on Scratch. That's the default, like the given resolution. That's how you assume it to be. But there's no reason why it can't be higher. As you can zoom in, you can see that there's a lot of weird artifacts that it's sort of. In this case, it's actually interpolating the zoom. So. I want to have it so that the export can be for larger screen sizes. So it will automatically scale it up and have higher resolutions. And of course, at some point in the not too distant future, you will be able to do landscape or to be able to do 16:9 sort of widescreen games, not the built-in aspect ratio and resolution of Scratch. So I've left those things open-ended for the future. They shouldn't be too hard to put into the project. But anyway, so that's how you do the HTML export. So a few things. At some point there will be different template options for exporting. Some of the things come from the project. So if I go Mr. Cow and then I change it to Gauntlet Cow Battle, then I can recompile it, and then I can just go I can just run the exporters again. So I can just go run exporters and it'll go pack, and that's going to tell me that it's repacked the images. That's nice. And then if I bring that back in and then I bring back my little window, happy, and that will go into there. You can see that it's changed the words here. We'll just do a few extra things. We'll open this with dun, 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 dun. I don't want to show all my history of stuff, so we'll use Sublime if that works. I never use Sublime, so I don't know if this is going to work. Takes its time. Alright, that's nice to know. Yeah, make it go away. I don't know how to use Sublime. That's a bad choice. Are there no menu options? Oh gosh. You may need to restart. Well, that's not helpful. We won't. Cancel. Blah blah blah. Okay, here we go. Now this looks like an editor that I understand. So basically, the idea is you're meant to cut and paste the bits that you want. You need to have the start glitter stuff, and you need to have basically the stuff in here, and then you can just sort of copy and paste that onto your actual HTML page. If you have like a website and you're trying to do something with this. This process will become much more simplified, and later on you'll be able to supply a template of how you want the HTML to look, and it will insert this stuff that it needs to in there. Or that's how it already kind of works. It has a little template and a very, very simple templating engine which just tells it where to shove in the bits of text and the bits of code that it needs to. And so that will be more available. And I'll just quickly show the support thing is it's quite small. This is 95k. So that comes with every project. That's a fixed piece of HTML piece of JavaScript code, which looks like that and has some commented out sections which we can get rid of, and it's not minified. And then you have the built project thing, which does things in very strange ways at the moment. So this is what it's turning everything into. And so this can create large amounts of code. So if you look at this piece of code is actually 18,000 lines long. And so I can definitely reduce this down considerably. And so one of the things is to reorganize how a lot of this works, and also to make way for features like local variables and functions that return values. I have to change this slightly because I did it in a very weird way that made sense at the time. There is also like I mentioned like yielding blocks or whatever they're called in JavaScript. I forgot what they're called. When the ones where you yield. Well, they would be quite useful. That's how Penguin Mod does it. I'm not entirely sure that's going to be more efficient, so I'm doing it in a way that doesn't use that. Simply because I want to have I'm going to move on to other export targets. I wanted to use I wanted to have a built-in HTML one that's just does it. It doesn't use anything external. The other ideas would be to use ActionScript, so it generates an ActionScript file. Not ActionScript, is that what's called? A hex. Sorry, a hex script. So hex with an E on the end is another programming language, but it has advantages is that there's lots of good tools that you can transpile, you can convert your hex project into things like Android apps or other things. So my target would be a hex file it will be a Hex project, and then you could use the Hex tools to generate other projects. I think that's how Construct 3 works. At least that's how Construct 2 worked. But probably I'm going to go with a C project that uses SDL. And so I'm trying to not use any weird language features that you don't get in C to do this. So it's going to work similar to how the HTML exporter works. And there probably will be a base Java version as well, which just uses the internal runner maybe. So anyway, that was the HTML. I hope that makes sense. This will be an easier thing to do in the future. But we will do one thing. We will just close project. It's gone. Discard, yes. All right, and so we are now going to create a new Commodore 64 project. So this is my Commodore 64 project, and we're going to go flag, repeat 10, print hello. And then we're going to go flag. I could just copy and paste, couldn't I? That's a better idea. All right. And we're going to write hello world. So if I compile and run that, Commodore 64s. All right. Hello world. Amazingly, that said hello world. So you can see this little bit at the bottom is a bit annoying. So this is debug information kind of at the moment. So later on, some of these things will disappear. But we can also export this now. So when I did the original video, you couldn't export these things. But there's a few interesting and useful features to go here. So we will... But you can't export the HTML. But at some point, you will be able to export the Commodore 64 projects to HTML, and it's not going to emulate them. It's just going to run them as JavaScript files. Then and has I've already written a JavaScript video driver basic thing for it. So we can create a binary, and I wonder if this works. Hold on, I'm going to take it off the screen for a second. Nope, it did not. Nice. There's quite a few things that, but we're very close to getting all the really odd things fixed up. So anyway, now I'm choosing back here. Target file. All right, and we're going to call this hello.png. If you don't put .png, it will just create it there. So anyway, that's the name of the file that we're doing. And then we've got a few other things here. One of them is the target address. So here it's actually created this. So this is, if you have no idea about Commodore 64s, this is compiling it to machine code, and it's storing it in a particular place inside the Commodore 64's memory. And it's storing it at memory location 49152, which is, so if I type S49152, it means run the machine code there, and it will run it. But there are other options. So we have, we can make it so that it runs as a basic thing. You can't change that in the internal runner at the moment, but you can in your exporting. But we won't do that just yet, because otherwise it won't make any sense to what that is. But we can do one thing, which is auto run. But we won't do that yet either. We will just run the exporters and create a Commodore 64 file. And you should see, if we go back up a file, that it has created a Commodore 64 program file, which is a Mammoth 1.1K. And most of that is actually the thread scheduler. So that's okay. So that's nice. We could load it into our external Commodore 64 emulator, or run it on a Commodore 64, an actual Commodore 64, by transferring it painfully off. But we can actually run it directly on an emulator from here. So there's a built-in emulator, right, that's here, but you might want to run it on Vice. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do that. And so now when we run the exporter, it should, fingers crossed, which you can't see me doing. Is it going to do it? I don't think it is. I love it when features just don't work anymore, when they worked fine a minute ago. Maybe you have to do it on this one. Run. I don't see any errors. Doing save. Well, that's annoying. Because that feature most certainly did run. What if I turn it off? Is it going to do it? Alright. If that doesn't work, well then... It did work. It would literally work last time. Well, that's right. This is a series of channels. So we'll just open it with x64. And so it comes up in Vice here. I haven't got like a bunch of these windows running somewhere else. So, oh, I know what I did. Yeah. I think you're supposed to go x64 auto start or something. Auto start. And then run it. Does that work? Export finish, blah, blah, blah. Gosh. Well, anyway, as you can see, when you load this in, it doesn't run because you still have to write SYS49152. You can see it runs. So you can see that this is a more accurate emulator. So the lines at the bottom are more cycle, well, they're cycle perfect, whereas my one's not very cycle perfect. And they have the more, perhaps more correct CRT emulation. But anyway, you can see it runs the same. So I've got the exporting working fine. But if you choose basic run, and then you run the exporters, and unfortunately it won't just restart it up, which is annoying. We'll open it again. And now it just runs. So it creates the little basic. So I don't know if I should do 808s. I thought 808s for the music thing, but maybe that has another meaning. But anyway, we can change the line. You can choose the line number. I'll make that an option. And so that would just run it automatically. So that was the Commodore 64 exporting. So it's all pretty straightforward. As the Commodore 64 projects get more advanced, there shall be some more options, I think. I'm a bit sad that the auto run, because I had that all running fine. I'm just going to start up a shell. X64. That works. Okay, fine. I'll rework out why that doesn't work. But anyway, thanks for watching. So that's all kind of working. So things that I've been working on, a lot of little weird bug fixes, some extra new commands. So now you can go and x equals 5. Get rid of all this. Repeat 4. Print x and x. So you can do x and 4. So this is not the AND or Boolean AND that you get in Scratch. So in Scratch you have to go, that's for Boolean. So you say if x is greater than 0 and y is less than 3. I always put brackets around everything. That makes sense. But there's another kind of AND, which is the bitwise AND. So you can do this, and so x and 4 has a particular meaning. Also, OR works, or, and supposedly, but I've made a small mistake somewhere, exclusive OR works as with that symbol, which I think is an odd symbol. If people keep asking, I see in Scratch websites that they wish they had the power of function, and that's what people think a power of function is, but in languages like C and JavaScript, that means exclusive or power of is something like that. You can actually do power. I think it's, I don't remember the command. We can have a look here now because I've added a lot more of these commands. So you can see you've got Boolean and Boolean bitwise complement. So you've got that as well, which is the little tilde. XOR inequality, you have greater than or equals to. So the bitwise stuff works in the internal runner, it works on the HTML output, and it works on the Commodore 64 export. It does not work on Scratch because no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't trick it into doing bitwise operations, though it will give a good go at it, and it will create commands that look like they might work, but they don't. So that's a bit of a shame. But greater than or equals to, which is not in Scratch, does actually get compiled to Scratch properly. It just does if it's greater than or equals to, so it just expands that out. So less than or equals, and those two things are now in there even though they're not in Scratch. And so there's a few other little things like that, and there's also little bugs. And the drawing tool, we have to make a new C64 project. No, I don't want to do that one. Cancel. One thing that doesn't work, and I'll just do it to show that it doesn't work, is it's not supposed to get rid of the old projects when you just do that. You're supposed to oh no, actually when you open a file, it's supposed to clear the current projects. So it should do that. It says that, but it doesn't actually get rid of the old projects. In fact, this doesn't even open the file. So there's a slight bug here. You just basically have to close everything first. So if I go discard current, and it still doesn't get rid of it. So yeah, oh my gosh. New app. Well, we'll just stick with this one. So this is a new app project. We will add in a library sprite, and we will choose Apple. All right, and then Apple was a bad choice because Apple is, bring it back, Apple is not a bitmap. So one of the things it doesn't do is it doesn't automatically go. So there's still a few little annoying bugs. Oh my gosh, I actually have to switch to a non. There we go. So now it's actually a bitmap. And so I've done most of these things here. So now there's a few more options. You've got these kind of drawing tools, which are the quick ones. Then you've got a flood fill. So you can go to the flood fill. Why does it say there's a whole bunch of stuff here? All right, and one thing you can do is you can right mouse click to pick a color. So if I go right mouse click, I picked up that color, or I can pick up that color. And so now I'm going to fill in the whole thing with that. And so it does a flood fill. And so we can undo that. We've got flood fill, we've got polygons. So polygon tool always starts off like this. You double click somewhere and it adds a point at that thing. And so you can continue around, and then you can resize, and you can make it go. You may have to, some of these things you have to actually move. Also, I'm going to have an option, like, I don't know how people think, right? It's like I have a primary color and then a sub color, right? And so when you're on the single color options, so these are not drawn properly, but they'll change. This is the outline one. You use the prime for the outline. When you do the filled one, you do the prime for the whole color. And then when you do the double color one, when you do the thing, then the sub one is used for the outside, but maybe you want the prime used for the outside. So that will be a weird option depending on how your brain thinks. But anyway, as you can see, you can do that. And you can do that, and then you can scale everything, and it will resize it, and then you can rotate it around, and at any point you can then just change these things. I think you can right mouse click and then you can delete, which lovely doesn't work, but again, some of these things don't update automatically and it's lost the color. So we're getting close to getting this to work, because it's still full of weird little glitches. but we will eventually. Did I right mouse click on something? I think I might have. Maybe that's the problem with the right mouse click. And so you've got like that, and so I think it's quite a hand. Like this is the way that I'd prefer to make things. At some points when there's layers, you'll be able to draw things quite easily over the top. Oh, also there's these annoying little menus that pop up. I had this brilliant idea. Well, I should make them move around closest to the pointer, which is kind of more annoying than it should be. So clearing just gets rid of it. Stamping just puts the current one down. So if I do a stamp and then I move it, then it's stamped into place. And if I do a new, it just stamps it into place and then restarts the whole process again. But you can also do that. Space does a stamp, escape quits and starts a new one, and delete or backspace is the same as clear. So if I go delete, it clears it until you move it again. So I've had a lot of thought about what is the best way of doing this, because originally you had to do something active. It would just show you the outline, but you had to actually stamp it before it was part of the image. The problem with that is that I don't think that's how people's brains will work, and they'll make something and then they'll go to something else, and then they would have lost their last thing. So it's always doing the current operation, and that's already part of the image. You have to, but if you stamp it, you create one that's fixed, and then you can still move it around to make another one. And later on, you'll be able to click on a point, and you'll be able to rotate around that point and not just rotate around the center, so that you can make some interesting shapes. And at some point in the future, there will be rounded. You'll be able to make curves. Though I haven't quite determined how I want the user interface for that to work. And the last thing is there's also text. So you create a little text thing, and it looks like this. The size and the rotate don't work, and they won't work for a while, but they will work eventually. So I can write, this is the text. This is outline text. So it's not too obvious that 4D, this is the text, because I've got chosen to outline. So it does do the outline. This is the text. And if you zoom in, you can see that it's all pixel art, but if you turn off pixel art, you can see that it's smoothed it out, and then you have the two different styles, and that works well. This is the text, and again, of course, you can go to, which doesn't automatically always do it, you can go to outline or you can go to filled. So there's a few things you have to finish to make sure that these automatically update, and of course you can change the stroke size. Again, you may have to move it. You may have to go to there, and everything's going to be black. We'll make it 89. So yeah, you've got text now, so you can make text, and there'll be an option to have. You've got bold, you've got italics. An option to make shadows as well, because shadows are a useful feature, and you can change the font family as you go. So free mono. Alright, so you get the point. So those are some interesting features. I'm sure there's lots of other things that I haven't mentioned. There's lots of underlying things that have changed. Oh yeah, you've got also export as, you can export the image as a JPEG. The problem with that is that it always clips it to the minimum area. So you can't export it at a certain size, but I'll change that later. You've got mirrors, you've got flip 45, so it flips it across the 45-degree angle. You've got rotate 90, which only rotates the part that's square. You've got center and shift and up and all that kind of stuff, and you can clear the image. So there's a few more things that need to be added. You've got cutting and pasting, so you can choose an area, and then you can set out where you want, and you can rotate it around. And then you can go cut, it cuts it out, and then you can paste it back in, which doesn't do the right sizing, because this image is a double resolution image. But again, these things will get fixed. And you'll be able to cut and paste operations between things as well. So we're getting there. We're almost at the point where I'm going to be happy to release a preview version of this. But we're not quite there yet. But soon, within a week or two, I hope. So thanks for watching. Nothing else to say. Yes, I will be doing the next video. Will be me trying to use this tool to actually make a little game, probably Space Invaders type game. So yeah, thanks for watching. Bye.